Meine Amphibious-Freunde von Fröschen, wir schauen uns heute von ambiguousamphibian The Sims 2 Underground an.
The Sims 2 was my favorite entry in the iconic series. A bizarre world featuring aliens, mole people, Bigfoot, tax evaders, giant bugs, and any other number of outlandish enigmas that made it so memorable. So after I wrestled it into installation on my PC over the last week, I decided I wanted to try something I had never done before. Something that would help me relearn the game after playing The Sims 1. When I entered Desiderata Valley and designed my sim, I knew I would be working from the ground up this time. It's the sinkhole challenge. Start in a pit deep below the earth and labor in any way possible to raise enough capital to escape back up to the wider world as a free man. But wait, there's a twist. Normally, there's no time pressure to complete this goal, but if I can't do it in about a year, my sim, Brad Pitt, get it? Will unfortunately advance to old age. Would I escape or die before time runs out in the pit? Okay, here are the rules. This is basically a starting with nothing challenge, except it would be too easy to start in an empty lot at ground level. That's for normies. So I went about the expensive task of defying the local homeowners association and lowered my property hundreds of feet below surface level. What remained was a square that showed exactly where my property ends. I began by puzzling over some of the blaring issues that were staring me right in the face. How would I retrieve the newspaper every morning, for example? Was it possible for other Sims to fall in and join me in my apparently Sisyphean task? Those were questions for later. I simply didn't have the time. There was still daylight and
Ich find's aber geil, wie er so Binoculars hat und einfach da ein bisschen nach oben sich umschaut.
much business to attend to. So the life of Brad Pitt began with some bird watching. Not the Brad Pitt you're thinking of. This is the story of this Brad Pitt we're talking about today. The leader of the local HOA was beside herself. Not only had I changed the character of the neighborhood, but I was about to completely tear up the yard. You see, when you have only $1 in your pocket in The Sims 2 and you're unable to retrieve the newspaper to find a job, you turn to the only method of rapidly acquiring capital that's possible. Dig up the entire yard in an effort to unearth buried treasure.
Als ob das geht, Alter. What the fuck?
Untold hordes of bullion may lie beneath your very own home. So I subversively removed my shovel from my pants and began the excavation on the property that was rightfully my own. Neighbors be damned. How, after all, would they possibly arrest me? If they did, that would achieve my goal anyway. After a full day of digging to China, I discovered 4 spouts of water and fell into a surprise fit of narcolepsy. No treasure, but I uncovered 12 valuable rocks, 3 maps, 9 bones, and various sculptures with a combined sale value of 3,610 simoleons. Bingo. I bought the most expensive refrigerator because it's the only appliance I required to stay alive, at least for now, until the winter. But building is expensive in The Sims, and landscaping is even pricier. If I was aiming to escape from this abyssal fissure in the earth, I'd need to set my sights and aspirations on becoming a bacon bringer. Hence the suit and tie. Dress for success, even if you're a ditch digger. So I spent the first 24 hours rousing Brad Pitt from slumber whenever he fainted of exhaustion. At last, upon the break of day 2.
Ich muss mal sagen, es ist krass, wie Sims 2 schon direkt viel, viel geiler aussieht als Sims 1. Wild. Aber Sims 1 sah auch schon nicht schlecht aus.
I found enough resellable subterranean junk that I could afford the best of beds. The colonial ironwood. Look upon my wealth. Passers-by appeared surprisingly nonchalant at the spectacle that lay beneath. So between days 2 and 3, I continued my excavation. Most of the time it was just garbage and worthless debris, but I eventually dug up buried treasure. I sold it for 5,000 simoleons, well within my means to build a real house instead of just camping outdoors on display for pedestrians overhead. And the great indoors. Crappy table, expensive, ornate chair, sexy bathtub. These I exchanged my treasure for. As long as I kept buying refrigerators stocked with snacks, I wouldn't starve. So the next step on day 3 was to build upward toward the surface. I was still living at rock bottom, literally, and with the autumn ending soon, I'd need a taller house better capable of withstanding the onslaught of winter's snows. Perfection. So by day 4, I was a homeowner, sharing equity in that great enterprise we call America. My next ambition was
Das einzige Problem ist, er hat irgendwann kein Geld mehr, so.
to spend more time inside. After all, a man of such high society shouldn't be subject to backbreaking labor to earn his living.
Aha.
So I reinvested my
Hacking.
treasure money into buying a computer. I would earn my keep by writing a novel online. The novel was about a fish with only one wish, a desire for world peace. In order to achieve world peace, he unfortunately fell into the trap of earning money to bring about his wishes. The entire rest of the book is just about a fish earning money. Notes from Underground. It has this cover. In the evening, I retreated to the sanctity of my new Zen garden, which I also purchased to overcompensate for the void of human interaction. I was chatting with babes online, sure, but in pursuing wealth, I was beginning to develop a bad habit of decadence, whereby I relied upon purchasing increasingly expensive items to cope with the stress of modernity. A psychological implosion was probably imminent. Nothing screams psychological implosion like having a rave party by yourself. So I embraced decadence on my way upward.
Was ist das für ein Geldbaum, Alter?
A rave party by yourself. So I embraced decadence on my way upward. New paintings, new bookshelves. I even used my aspiration score to buy a money tree. Yes, a money tree that I planted outside in my yard. It all went toward the purpose of making subsurface life seem more enjoyable and tolerable before I made it back up to the sidewalk, and all the dreams it promised. At last the snows fell, and I did what any single man experiencing a midlife crisis in his mid to late 30s on the brink of a violent fugue would do. Stayed inside and played SSX3 on my computer as I gradually raked in the dough from my money tree and best-selling novel royalties. Life is a Kafkaesque nightmare with a gradual upward trajectory. But anyway, enough side questing. I put that money to work with a 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor, but before I knew it, I ran out of money again and I had reached the height limit on building, still woefully hundreds of feet well below the surface. I would need to resort to greater lengths to earn the money I required. I had a plan, but I'd need more money to set it into action. So I wrote another best-selling novel. The novel was about a ladybug. The ladybug moved to the city. One day, the ladybug discovered a clue, which led it to fight the evil alien overlord and save the city.
Ich find's geil, wie er diesmal so diese Bücher auch so, vorliest.
It was
interpretiert.
rewarded by the mayor with a cash prize, and they all lived happily ever after. Thanks to my artistic storytelling genius, along with the supplemental income from the underground riches on my property, I was able to do the unthinkable and raise the largest mound of dirt beside my home. Huge and bewildering. When I couldn't get onto it, though, I just started building upward from the ground itself. An exorbitantly expensive pile of dirt. Tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
It wasn't pretty. It wasn't the dirt I wanted. But it was the dirt I deserved. I grew a little anxious here. I was already halfway to becoming a senior citizen. Would I escape the pit before I became old and frail? Or make it out with the sanguine vigor of youth coursing through my veins? There was, up the financial aspiration tree, a fountain of youth. The ultimate goal. Make it out into the world with both time and money. Yes, that made sense. So I prepared the yard for the landscaping needed to make my escape. To raise enough money, I excavated the last of the buried treasure and sold my house with all its furnishings and possessions. This gave me enough resources and space to raise the last ground and complete the spiraling labyrinthine staircase that zigzagged back and forth proudly toward the sidewalk, into the last tower, spiraling up the staircase, and finally out the door onto the grass, where I could step foot into my new life as a free man. And so I raced up the stairs, up the other stairs, and the other stairs, and the other stairs. At last, fresh air, free as a bird, a miracle. Like discovering my legs again for the first time. Even the most mundane of tasks were a joy. Placing the newspaper.
Ja, ich finde die Idee aber auch schon wieder geil. Fuck, Mann. Also Ambiguous kommt echt auf sehr, sehr geile Ideen, Mann. Allein dafür auf jeden Fall schon mal ein Like da lassen. Sehr, sehr geil. Ich fühle es echt extrem, wie er so alte Spiele sich raussnackt oder auch neue und einfach auf echt geile Ideen kommt, wie man die wie man die mal durchspielen kann.
In the trash.
Fühl ich.
I
Sehr, sehr cool.
experienced all over again the fun of
Damn it,
paying
man.
bills, the familiar, awkward,
Geil.
sidelong glances of passers-by. But my time was short,
rausgekommen?
and like Cinderella's coach transformed into a pumpkin at the stroke of midnight, so too did old age ravage the youth that I began that intrepid journey
in
to the
3
surface.
Tagen.
Ah, woe betide. But while there's life, there's hope, they say. I spent the last of my youth to find a job and climb that tree of aspirations, learning skills, acquiring luxury goods, and making every single day count. If I achieved enough and averted disaster, I could secure enough money to drink the old age serum and maybe, just maybe, reverse the aging process to wind back the clock on those lost days once again spent underground. But any minute now, I would get old. I could feel it in my bones. And before I knew it, I was geriatric, an old coot. Ironically, just when I earned the anti-aging serum. But maybe I could make up for lost time. The past was perhaps mutable. No one had ever proven the contrary. A couple shakes and I was already feeling younger, stronger, more virile. It seemed it was working. Maybe if I just drank enough until... Death is not the end. In the words of Gandalf the Grey, just another path, one that we all must take. Well, for what it's worth, the best things in life are long and challenging, and best looked back upon with rose-tinted lenses a few years later. Well, thank you for striving in your splendid life and making every moment an adventure. Thank you, Brad Pitt with
Geil.
one T. And thanks to my patrons.
Geil. Cool. Danke auch an die Patrons natürlich. Gut, dass der Einbrecher sich nochmal das Haus vornimmt. Wichtig. Und ja, jeder wird irgendwann sterben. Aber das war ein geiles Video. Ich hoffe, mein Video hat euch auch gefallen. Wir sehen uns morgen wieder, Leute. Bis dann, haut rein und Servus.